How you doing?
Hello.
All right. How you doing?
Welcome, Justin.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. So, obviously, like I said, we're gonna talk about some of your artwork, and I'd like to ask you a few questions about kind of your history as an artist and coming up, and So basically, run through that kind of stuff. We're also gonna show some of your art images as we go. So yeah, welcome to Sulphurbath. Thanks for chilling.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
How would you describe when you first got into art? Were you a youngster or?
I think I started drawing when I was about 3.
Really, 3 years old. That's
Yeah.
cool. And do you remember having a long, fluid history of illustration since then, kind of thing, or?
I've been drawing almost every day most of my life.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. I mean, it almost like a nervous habit at this point, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So a nervous habit. I know one of the things that you do is when you draw on the train a lot, right? When you're
Sure.
on the
yeah.
subway.
Yeah. Since I moved to New York, I've been doing a lot of subway drawings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But did you want to talk about this stuff before New York, right?
Yeah, I'd like to know. Yeah, your stuff before New York, your history. When did you move to New York, and where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Kansas.
Mhm.
My mother is from Sapporo, Japan, and my father is from rural Kansas. So I spent most of my early youth in a pretty white Midwestern environment.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, man. Whoa.
Yeah,
And
you really gotta talk in it. Yeah.
But anyway, when after I finished school, I went to Japan for about 7.5 years, kind of trying to figure out my mother's side of the equation. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And you became fluent there during that time and everything. You speak Japanese and all.
Kind of had to survive,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
And you were also studying there, going to school there as well,
Mm-mm.
or you
I
were
was
working,
just like
or?
teaching for a living, and then
Oh, cool.
showing art when I had the chance, traveling when I can get away with it.
Now, did your parents meet over there? Did they meet over here, or?
My parents met in the enrollment line at university in Kansas.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's a nice story.
yeah.
And what did they study? What kind of backgrounds did they have?
Well, my mother originally was studying microbiology, but she eventually became an engineer. And my
Mhm.
father started out with, I think, chemistry, and then transferred into English somehow. He wanted to be a writer at some point.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big leap, right?
Sort of, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess.
And so you spent about 7 years, you said, in Japan. Where in Japan were you living?
At first, I was in the deep country. I was in a part of Shikoku called Kagawa, in an area that was all rice fields and mountains. Literally no streetlights even in some parts.
And you chose this? This was your...
Well, actually, I went there as a jet. It's part of a program from the Japanese government or whatever, and you can choose where you want to go, but there's no guarantee you'll get there.
Right.
So I chose a place that was geographically not very far away from there, but completely different, actually.
Right.
I didn't say, please put me in the middle of nowhere.
And they were like, so we've lost all of our openings for anywhere interesting, so you can have the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you can go and be lost. Yeah.
And where you were from in Kansas, you think that was a lot similar or much different than?
No, not at all. I'm from Lawrence, Kansas, which is a college town.
Oh,
So,
I see, yeah.
I mean, going from a college town into the middle of the rice fields where, there literally aren't any other non-Japanese people is pretty intense.
At what age were you when you...
I was in my early 20s when I went over to Japan.
Oh, when you went over?
Yeah.
Okay.
And started living there. It was a...
It's 22?
23.
23 is when
Yeah.
you showed up on the rice fields.
It was probably something that a lot of people don't get to experience. So in that respect, I think I'm very fortunate, because it was so intense at that time that if I was walking down the street, sometimes cars would slow down just so they could gawk at me and drive really slowly while I walked, because they were so amazed to see somebody who wasn't from that area.
Now, what was it about you that made them so sure that you weren't from the area?
I don't think it takes much.
Yeah?
They're pretty familiar with one another, and the one thing about Shikoku, that area, is that at that time, it had not only been connected to mainland Japan by a bridge for 11 years, so it was still kind of like traveling back in time a little bit. Culturally, it was a lot more old school Japan, which I think was a pretty amazing experience, actually.
I'm sure it was. And, what were your living conditions like when you were there? Were you in an apartment or?
Well, I lived in this weird apartment,
Yeah.
kind of on this road, and that was about it,
Okay, an apartment on the road.
Apartment on a road.
But you had your own
apartment
place,
was
though?
on a road.
It was on a road. It was
That
a
is
long straight road.
interesting.
Actually, the thing about it that was great is that it was right in front of a road that the Bosuzoku, the Japanese motorcycle dudes, would race up and down every
It
night.
was straight enough?
Yeah.
Or
It was like a
whatever.
long stretch. Like, so every night I got to listen to motorcycles. It was
I
kinda-
gotcha. The drag strip.
yeah.
Got to.
And you were you were making work the whole time you were living there as well, right?
Sure, yeah,
And
yeah.
how did your work change when you were moving over in there and working there?
Oh man, it completely. I mean, I was the first time I'd ever been in an environment where I was dealing with a complete language and cultural barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't really speak much Japanese when I moved to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had really rudimentary, like, I like your shoes, hello, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first thing you learn. I like your shoes.
Not exactly.
It's a good thing to know.
Maybe the second or third thing. I'm not
Nice
really sure.
shoes.
So had you been drawing like a long time before you went there?
Yeah, I've
And
been doing
then
it my entire life.
Did you notice a shift
Well,
in anything when you got there and you were experiencing like different ways of illustration or just in general art?
well, I think that because it was the first time I'd had like a barrier linguistically and culturally,
Yeah.
it forced me to kind of really speak a little louder. And so like my work became a lot more pop as a result of living
Really?
in Japan. Like
That's
it was a
interesting
lot
take.
more understated and kind of
More average.
subtle prior to that,
Yeah.
but then it became really like pop art in a strange way because I had to kind of try and find a way that anybody could respond to, something that was familiar, universally.
We're going through online and showing some images of some of your work right now. You have these collage bits. I remember the title for this.
Yeah, this is 8x8 1 USA. This is I can't remember the exact wording, but it's something like 8 of the characters Americans told me I resembled during the 8 years before I moved to Japan. And that's
Nice.
actually me in the center as a very young lad.
Right. And
Yeah.
I can see from here, it's kind of small, but I see Bruce Lee from here.
Yeah, there's Pat Morita, Ming the
Pat Morita.
Merciless. The usual suspects, when you're
Yeah.
from Kansas and you're kind of, off-white.
So you're kind of tracing these differences in
Pat Morita's
culture
like
and
chill.
perceptions
You're
in
not
culture as
entirely
you're there.
different.
Sure.
But you're
sure.
partially different. We can't figure it out.
Yeah, it's like an annoying in between. Yeah, please. So the next one is actually like whatever. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
what
there's
the
a
timing on
delay
this.
on it. Folks at home
All right.
must
So
realize that
anyway,
we're not.
it'll get there at some point. The next one is like the companion. It's called 8x8 2 JPN, and it's basically just after living in Japan for almost 8 years, it's 8 of the characters that Japanese people often told me I resembled.
Is that Colonel
during the 8
Sanders
years.
in that one?
Oh
Was
yeah,
it
I got
Colonel
that a lot. Yeah.
Colonel
Really?
Sanders,
Huh.
huh?
What really freaked me out
Yeah.
was that people thought I looked like Homer Simpson or
That's
or,
kind of
or Buzz
far-fetched.
Lightyear,
Yeah, Buzz
That's
Lightyear.
very
or
difficult for me
Mr.
to
Incredible,
place.
like
Oh
it's.
my god.
I mean, it's one thing to be told that you look like a human being, but when you get into the realm of animated characters,
Right.
it messes with your
You
sense
remind
of
me
self.
of Barney a little bit.
Yeah.
And so
Kinda
this
ivory.
kind of
I see it.
perception of self-identity, you were kind of drawing into your work and doing pieces like this a bit, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was fresh out of Kansas and Japan for the first time, so it was a natural thing to explore
Mm-hmm.
early on, back then.
Now, would you say that you, because you said before that you found your art to get more pop, do you say that in a very, I guess, in a global sense, or was it very Japanese pop that you were finding yourself into, or was it a more international type of popular culture?
Well, I think initially it was more, excuse me, where I come from, so it was more Japanese and American. And I think the longer I lived in Japan, the more it kind of branched out to other Asian cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Just naturally, as I traveled more, studied more, experienced more, it just made sense,
Yeah.
I don't actually know what's next. You know what's the next slide?
We're gonna keep flipping through them. I'm not sure. I remember the one that you did that was like a Japanese style Ronald McDonald.
Okay.
I think that one might be coming
That's
up
the
right
next
next. Yeah. What is that image? That's
That's the McDemon.
Yeah.
I got really fascinated with commercial culture, like archetypes and characters, because I was thinking about a lot of my work deals with values and belief systems, and I kind of thought of like Shintoism, Japanese. That's like there's like a god for everything.
Mhm.
There's like the Shinto god of wind and rice and fire and everything else. There's
the
like,
kami.
Yeah,
right?
well, the kami-sama. They're everywhere. And I got the idea to make new gods, from Max Shinto, like McDonald's and Shinto
Mm.
combined. And this guy is one of those Shingami-sama, the new gods of Shinto.
Oh, that's super cool.
McShinto, I should say.
McShinto,
McShinto.
as opposed to McDemon.
Well, he's the McDemon of McShinto. Yeah, I mean, there were actually a whole series of these guys, but I didn't compile pictures
Any
of all
other
of them.
specifically branded ones?
Oh, there was the Kentucky Fried Buddha. That was
Right.
one that, yeah, but I didn't actually bring that one to
Kentucky
Did
Fried
Wendy
Buddha.
make
share.
it
The
into
Kentucky
it at
Fried
all?
Buddha. What's that?
Wendy, did she make it?
I didn't actually go there, man. I don't know why. I just wasn't feeling Wendy
Yeah.
the way I was feeling the Colonel.
Yeah.
Who knows? I think it's because those two are like the top two, like the big
Yeah.
dogs
Yeah.
of like fast food culture. You know?
Well, I think that's why I immediately went to Wendy because
Yeah.
like you're number
Yeah,
3.
KFC is huge
solidly.
there.
Yeah, it's huge. They still have like metal statues of the Colonel everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. These were some interactive. One of the things I did to try and bridge, culture and language barriers was to do interactive projects. So I did these projects with, I made these masks out of like that collage you just saw of the McDemon, and I made like a mask shop that was similar to what Japanese people see in, festivals or whatever.
Mhm.
So everyone could immediately relate with it, just on kind of a fun level. And then
Cool.
if they did certain things, like there's certain interactive things that we could do, and then the result would be that they chose the mask that they liked. They'd have their photograph with and without the mask, and then that would actually be added to the larger piece. And then in exchange, as a kind of gift of thanks, they'd take a mask home that was signed and
Oh,
dated.
cool. That sounds
Yeah,
awesome.
It's like a kind of a, it wasn't a very financially smart thing to do, but it was. It's
Art
pretty,
rarely
Yeah.
leads to financial freedom.
This was even more ill-advised than usual.
It's actually spending money.
Because I ended up giving away like over 400 of those masks.
Mm.
So
Jeez.
Mhm.
yeah, but
Yeah,
it
and
was
it-
worth it.
Again, it's dealing with self-identity and
Yeah, or
how
what?
that can change and be perceived.
Well, the funny thing is, like, people often chose masks that look like themselves, which is why I chose this picture in particular, because
Oh,
the
interesting.
people
yeah.
actually sort of resemble the weird, mask they chose.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's a conscious thing or what, but
Mhm.
yeah. What's next?
It was a vanity thing.
Yeah,
Vanity
like
thing.
attracts
Like
and
like
vanity.
ourselves.
It's
Yeah.
like that Twilight Zone, man.
As much as we,
The
we
masks.
probably act
Yeah,
like we
with
don't,
the old man.
I think a lot of the time we're very satisfied with ourselves. Maybe it's part of our culture,
Mm.
being all American. We've all spent our time in different places, some of us more than the others, but maybe it's a very American sentiment that we're pretty cool.
I guess we like to think we're pretty cool. Yeah. It's kind of reassuring to think you're cool. Yeah. There's the actual mask shop. That's how it was installed. So
Oh, cool.
as people participated, their photographs were added to the grid, and it became this larger piece
Oh,
with a
nice.
record of all the people that were kind enough to give me some time, conversation. I mean, that was the best part about it, was that the interactive thing really just functions as an excuse to meet people and
Mhm.
like have interesting conversations with people from all over the world. Because
Yeah.
I did this several times in Japan. I did it in Hiroshima at one point, and there are people from everywhere showing up because it's such an international city. So it was great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what do you see this image here? What's this? This is somebody showing up to view this exhibition.
Right,
here.
right. It's somebody like participating in an early version of the project. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
so we're
we
gonna
probably
run
should
through a
move
bunch.
forward.
Yeah, we're gonna run
Yeah.
through a bunch of your images here. We're just gonna
'Cause it could
kind of
take
pop
forever.
through them. Yeah, because we got a lot of them here. We want to show people at home that are listening. But I know you have tons of work, and you've done lots of different gallery shows, both in Japan and here in New York City, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
So as we're going through these images, can you talk to us a little bit about your move back from Japan to New York City and how that influenced your work?
Well, and we'll get to that. I mean, I think we should just keep going with the images while I talk, just move
Mhm.
forward. But when we get to the second set of images, that's all New York, where it starts off. And I think the first thing that New York did was kind of clobbered me with diversity,
Mm-hmm.
because instead of it being more of an American versus Asian culture thing, it became like the entire world is just everywhere all the time situation, Like, so I was drawing on trains, as you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a pretty intense cultural classroom, You have like people from every country in the world hanging out in a closed space with you. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's so multifaceted, and you can walk down the streets here in New York City and hear every language in the world, literally.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. I love it.
And so, but a lot of your work was about identity and about even, to some sense, trying to trace your own identity in your art, right?
Yeah.
So when you hit New York, suddenly you're in a larger pond and such a vast network of people and other artists and everything. Did you find that it was easy to move into New York at first from your experiences in Kansas and Japan? Or did you hit the ground running? Like, what was your experience moving into the city
It took
like?
me a while to get my sea legs. New York was a brand new experience, It was, in some ways, I think it was more intense than moving to rural Japan,
Oh, yeah.
actually. Yeah.
And how long have you been in the city now?
I've been here since 2006, so I guess about 7 years.
Mm-hmm. About 7 years.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Hey, Les, could you move to the next set? Would you mind? Yeah, sorry, man. You could skip a bunch of those and just move into the train stuff.
Yeah,
if
we
you
might have
want.
to. You
It's
got a lot
probably
of
better,
a lot of
you know.
images in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the folks at home will see you as you go through them. What's that one? That's just images of some color work you did?
It's a triptych of collages made out of children's play money,
Oh, cool.
like Japanese children's yen.
And then I've always loved this one. It's like the Torii as
Children's
the
yen?
Yeah.
What is,
Kodomo
what is
Genko.
that? Oh, like
Play money, like paper
like
money
Monopoly
for kids.
money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've always loved this image. It's like the Torii McDonald's sign.
Yeah, the McShinto drive-through. Sure.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Sure.
Is it a watercolor?
No, that was like a oil pastel. I don't know. Is it solvent transfer? A few other things. I can't even remember everything I did with that. But
Mm-hmm.
What's on the menu at the McShinto drive-through? What do you get there?
I don't think it's anything that you're gonna want to eat. That's for sure. Pretty unsavory.
But at least I get to pay for it at the
Fire
end.
and brimstone. You might be able to catch a sulfur bath while you're there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sure.
And
that
they're
works.
switching up right now to
okay.
one of your mobile works. You also do this woodwork, right? Is this all?
Oh yeah, that's one of the sculptures, right? Sure.
Yeah.
These are all handmade mobiles, and I think what do you use? Balsa wood or what do you?
They're basswood.
Basswood?
Basswood with like photo elements and hemp twine and stuff. They're all
Mhm.
handmade. Yeah, I don't know what's next, but
And those are a whole series of things too,
Okay.
as well, right?
yeah, they kind of like they relate to these other things that I made, like these flying houseboat things. I think that's coming up next, maybe.
Yeah.
So are these made in
Yeah.
New York, or is this still,
Yeah.
still this is
Yeah.
your
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've been making these. I made them actually. I started building again after I moved back to the States. I didn't build very much in Japan, and a lot of these ideas I kind of like mulled over during the years I was there, though.
Mhm.
yeah.
But it was somehow coming back here gave me the reason to build finally. I
It's
don't know.
funny because when you look at them, though, I get the impression they're very Japanese in origin, just
Sure.
from the materials and the way that they're formed. Because I'd seen a bunch of them, just hanging.
Sure, yeah.
But when you look at them, you get a sense of that. But it's funny that you hadn't even really began it.
Well,
Mhm.
You
I-
got that till you got here.
Mhm.
those houseboats actually. I got that idea before I went to Japan, and then never
Yeah.
figured out how to make it. It was a technical issue partially because they're very difficult to make. So I procrastinated for a long time. It's like a lot of things are difficult to start,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And after I got back from Japan, about a decade had passed, and it just seemed like it was the right time. I don't know.
That's cool. And you have a whole variation of those too. You have the wood, the mobiles,
Sure.
the boats,
Everyone
and also a
was.
lot of those have like little tiny, smaller origami works inside of them too, right?
Right. They'll have really tiny folded cranes and little houseboats inside them.
And so what we're showing right now is actually the spread of your illustrations from the gallery show.
Yeah, this
You
is
want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. This is actually a bunch of subway drawings. I think it's like 39 of them, with black tape lines connecting them, kind of illustrating a hierarchy. They're all employees of a fictional corporation.
Okay, and what is that corporation? A fictional?
I don't know. It's probably also quite unsavory. I
Mhm.
think it's right up there with McShinto.
Not the kind
Okay.
of thing that you've really, not the kind of thing that you've really fleshed out in a very realistic way. Just sort of a shadow of what influences their connection.
Well, I play around with like unpleasant slogans, and they kind of give me a glimpse of what we're really doing. But
do you
it's
have
just
any to
not.
share?
I'll get back to you on
No,
that.
it's funny because like these were up during the Bushwick Arts, the open
Yeah, they were up
spaces.
in the gallery for Bushwick Open Studio.
So I mean, but when you look at it, it's put together, and what I got from it was almost like I don't know if you remember these like court cases during the 80s and 90s about like mob families.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I get the
Right.
they tell you where
we got
like
Papagino up here.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like Giacotti was up here, and like Gotti was over there. Like I get the feeling from looking at it, the way that the whole thing was constructed, that this was a
Sort of
nefarious
sinister hierarchy.
organization. Yeah.
Well, I have a day job pushing paper in Midtown for a Japanese corporation, and I think that.
They have a sinister hierarchy too.
Well, I'm not going to get into that, but I think that just being exposed to that kind of culture is a big factor in why I
Yeah.
do these things. I mean, it's based on the organization charts that corporations have, where
Yeah.
they literally have like CEO, VP, blah blah
It's
blah.
extremely dehumanizing.
Yeah, it's really.
I find that every time that because I experience the same thing in my job.
Mm.
It's just such a very strange way to represent a person.
Well, it's so absurd because I don't necessarily respect people just because they're paid a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I don't actually think somebody's
often
great because
think
they're high
very
ranking.
oppositely.
I don't really understand it.
Yeah.
But how deep does the mythology go in these images that we're looking at? I mean, there's tons of different characters, and there's so much detail in each one.
Sure.
So you have this one spread where they're all connected in this one hierarchy. But where's the mythology come from? I mean, is this...
It's I think it's kind of a hodgepodge of whatever I grew up kind of consuming culture-wise, and also I've been really interested in a lot of symbolism in general. Like I've been studying like Dutch masterwork and stuff, and getting into like weird alchemy imagery and all sorts of stuff. And I think that I just like to mix these kinds of symbols up, kind of recontextualize things that are ancient and kind of imply something universal but a bit ambiguous, maybe kind of give people a little more to make their own.
Yeah, that's often, a lot of them have like this really great like traditional Japanese garb on the character, or like the samurai garb, and then I love how you use like the backgrounds of the flowers and the fire, and a lot of times it's like the flowers become leaping flames kind of thing.
Sure, yeah. I mean they're pretty densely layered. They're
so detailed, and this whole series we're looking at is all done on the train. Or do you sit at home and do these at night as well?
They're probably if I do any touch up, it's probably less than 5% of the overall process.
Wow.
And when you say like these were done on a train, was that for a purpose, or like what, or were they people? Like, are they based on like just random?
Yeah, these people you see on the train or something.
Is this when you have time?
Yeah, or is this just like exactly? Is this when you're like I'm locked in for 45 minutes while I ride this thing?
Yeah.
No, I started drawing on trains because my first living situation I had no space, and I was unaccustomed to New York and the pace of it, and I had no time. So initially it was a purely pragmatic thing. It was like I'll draw on the train to maximize the efficiency of my time. And then it became something that I actually really enjoyed, because I realized that I'm a compulsive people watcher, and the train is just an embarrassment of riches when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I realized I loved it, and I realized that it was an interesting way to kind of, have some kind of an interface with the people around me without actually dealing with them in a real, direct or invasive way. Like, I don't actually draw real people. I never draw actual passengers. There are no unwitting subjects.
Right.
I'm not into exploiting people that way. But I'm sure they assume it anyway, but that's just so you know, I don't do that. But people contribute in terms of just the tone or the vibe of the overall thing. Because, everyone knows who lives in New York that the subway has a very distinct, especially at rush hour in the morning and in the evening,
Well, I know when I'm on the train, I very often, like, I'm an observer, too.
Yeah, look at that.
When you're an observer, you just watch, like, who people are, what time of day it is, what train they're on, where they're going. I wonder what they're doing. Who are they going to see?
Why do they look so unhappy?
Why are they unhappy? Why are they sleepy? You watch people and your eyes dart back and forth from face to face.
Oh, yeah.
And you just, as an observer, you just get that,
Well, the early subway drawings were like me trying to kind of come to terms with New York. So I was doing a lot of like archetypical drawings of different characters or kinds of people that I had never encountered before, but mythologizing them kind of, And then later it became this whole corporate thing. But initially it was more about belief systems or mythology.
But I think that's interesting that you made that sort of bridge to this corporate thing, because in a sense, in the time I've spent here in New York, I had a lot of time where I was in school, but there's a lot of time where I was, having a job, working full time. And it was like almost my second experience of New York. And there is this very mythological sense to the corporate hierarchy. It's very, very odd when you're a part of it. And so I'm always on the outside looking in, and I always see the influence that this power structure has had on the people that are like in it. And it's very, in my opinion, frightening. I don't like it at all.
Yeah. Well, I hear you. And Blaine made a comment earlier about belief systems kind of being like constructs or whatever, and kind of things we impose on reality to kind of make sense of it. And I think that's a very perfect example of that, But I think any kind of group of human beings kind of forced to occupy the common space and deal with each other in one way or another in a job, they develop their own kind of interpersonal mythology. They're kind of obvious myths. And I think all human beings kind of do that to themselves too. I mean, we can't really help it. We're kind of like we're all raised on all this stuff, right? Like we're so meta at this point. How could we possibly be in touch with reality all the way?
Well said. Well said.
I mean,
well put.
Yeah.
Very well put. Cool, man. Yeah. So also just we're wrapping up here. I just want to ask a last couple questions just about your work and this performance that we showed a few minutes ago. People were able to see the pictures all up on the wall as the hierarchy, but then there were also a few color images in there. So I just want to mention that you spent a long time without painting in color at all, right?
Right. Yeah.
Paper.
When I was a student, I actually have a painting degree, but I stopped painting I think my second year of college. I had some bad experiences, and I stopped painting for about 20 years, and then I've been hanging out with a good friend of mine named Dane, who's an excellent painter, and I think just seeing him paint really got me excited about painting in a way I hadn't even thought about literally in 2 decades. So, yeah, it's fun.
And is that what you're pursuing now? I mean, you still do the train drawings, but are you painting a lot more now, even after these few? Or?
I'm always doing a lot of things at the same time. I'm always building stuff, and I'm simultaneously painting stuff and drawing stuff, and then I'm coming up with new ideas for, like, I'm working on interactive ideas, which I may or may not do, and I'm working on actually a corporate handbook for my company.
Oh, cool.
You know?
Cool. Yeah.
Like maybe something that actually shows like a photograph of the org chart, and then some of the key players and the power structure, you know, the big dogs.
History.
Yeah, exactly.
Mission statement.
Very
Oh,
cool.
that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
What's the philosophy of this corporation? We want to
Yeah,
know.
I've actually already, I've already got some test covers and stuff.
That sounds
and
amazing.
Do you say what the
slogans,
company does?
Well, they certainly exploit things, that's for sure.
I think that's a
Our
really
main
Exploiting
export
dreams.
is
Yeah.
exploit.
in a lot of the corporate like propaganda, I'll call it,
Mm.
that I've seen and experienced, it's always very nondescript about like what the company does. I always when I consult for corporations, I often have to ask, what do you do here? And there are times where people just kind of laugh as if they don't know either.
Because they're consultants also.
I
It never
have a very
ends.
specific role.
It's just a web of confusion,
Yeah.
really. We synergize.
So, Justin, can you share the webpage? You have a webpage where anybody at home can go and look through your artwork and stuff,
it's
right?
Anyone at home with internet.
www.justinbaldwin.net. So
Cool.
just justinbaldwin.net.
JustinBaldwin.net.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. And be careful,
It's
there
your
are a
turn.
couple
I
other,
missed out on
you know,
Justin
Justin Baldwins in the
Baldwin.net.
world that you could stumble across if you get that wrong.
JustinBaldwin.net.
There's even like another artist named Justin Baldwin, which kind of irks me, but
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
What's his
man.
stuff like?
.com.
it's totally different, thank goodness.
His is
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
.com.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
this is, I think it's .com, but don't go to justinbaldwin.com.
Yes.
It's justinbaldwin.net.
.net. That's
There's also
N-E-T.
Justin Baldwin Wineries. Have you ever heard of that guy?
No.
Yeah, there's some guy that contacted me one time wanting me to like come to his vineyard and like illustrate one of his like
Really?
wine labels. Yeah, he's like, we have the
Mm.
same name and it's a great name. You should come to my
Just because he
vineyard."
wanted
And I was
people
like,
to say, "Oh, drawn by Justin Baldwin," and all his friends were like, "Oh, you're
I'm gonna
amazing."
be honest, I'd be tempted
I thought about
to
it, you
take
know.
that
Yeah.
job. You know,
Thought
like,
about
I'd
it.
do
So the
label,
bottom
I
line
think
is you
I
didn't
think
do
I'd
it.
Yeah.
I was on the fence and I just didn't get
And
around
then
to
the
dealing
fence
with the
got
logistics.
very
You know,
expensive.
yeah.
I bet you
Yeah.
could do a really cool wine label though. That would be really sweet.
Well, I could always write the guy back.
Or we
Yeah.
could just make a
Yeah.
fake wine and have you do one for us.
Sure. Yeah.
Or a
Yeah.
real wine, stomp on some grapes.
Whatever we feel like.
Yeah.
A label. How about just a label for a wall, just saying, "Don't
Justin
bump into this
Baldwin
wall." Or
walls.
We
something.
should just
Yeah.
have like a fictional winery that I make labels for.
There you go. There you go.
The real Justin Baldwin winery might get a little bit
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
I have a fictional
But,
vineyard.
I'm down. Let's do it. Next episode.
Awesome.
Do it.
They got those good Brooklyn grapes, and there's
Well,
no
actually-
space.
Actually, I do have a grapevine growing on a trellis in my backyard. We
You're
can-
already
we can harvest
started,
that
man.
stuff.
That's great.
it.
man.
That's Queens though. No,
You just
yeah,
need
it's
to
Queens,
get
though.
to
We
work
just
on the
gotta
label.
beat the birds.
it's not really
Ah.
Brooklyn.
Yeah, sorry.
And you need a vat and
Yeah.
some Lucille Ball kind of stomping on it
Yeah.
kind of situation.
Oh yeah, some crazy. I love Lucy action.
I'll be there to help stomp grapes with you, man, in the future.
I'll
Cool.
be there to drink it.
Awesome.
Great, right from our toes.
Sounds
I'll let
great.
you know when it's closer to the date.
Yeah, so that's everybody's jobs as far as the winery. All right, so yes, thank you very much, Justin, for joining us.
Thank you
Yeah,
guys.
it's